Let me give you a few elements where I think the Holocaust is unprecedented. Not unique, I'll explain that in a moment, but unprecedented. First of all, the totality. By 1941, the Nazis and their supporters in all other countries, including Hungary, defined Jews not by their own Jewish definition, by the definition from outside, by others, identified them, marked them, dispossessed them, humiliated them, concentrated them, transported them, and killed them. Anyone they could, without any exception whatsoever. Half Jews, in other words, people who had 2 Jewish grandparents and 2 non-Jewish grandparents, were sometimes included in this and sometimes not. People who had only 1 Jewish grandparent were not considered to be Jews in most places. In some places, for instance in Russia, by the Nazis, yes, they were considered Jews even if they had only 1 Jewish grandparent. This is totality. This is an attempt at total annihilation of every single person in that particular group. It's an intent. The Nazis were defeated. They could not do what they wanted. But they certainly wanted to, and wherever they could, they did. The second element is the element of universality. Because by 1941, Nazi Germany, the leaders of Nazi Germany, wanted to annihilate the Jews all over the globe. There are documents to prove that. Let me quote just one. I could quote more. On the 28th of November 1941, Adolf Hitler in Berlin met with Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who was a pro-Nazi and collaborator and recruited a Muslim division in the Balkans to fight together with the Nazis. Now, Mr. Husseini didn't know any German. Mr. Hitler did not know any Arabic. So there was a translator who took stenographic notes. So we know exactly what happened. And when Husseini asked Hitler, what will happen to Jews outside of Europe? Hitler answered that when we win the war, this is November 1941, they were on the point of conquering Moscow, defeating the Soviet Union and so on. He said, when we win the war, we will ask all the countries of the world to treat the Jews like we treat them here. A clear definition of intent. And one can quote other cases of the same kind. A statement by Himmler, for instance, in 1943, when he discussed with someone the possibility of a separate peace with America. He said, the thing that we will ask the Americans to do, the only thing that we want, is that they give us their Jews. And so on and so forth. So universality, for the first time in human history, you have a universally conceived genocide. The third element is ideology. Every genocide is justified, rationalized by an ideology. You have to explain to people why they should kill other people. So you have an ideology. The ideology is sometimes pretty wild. But behind all these ideologies, there are pragmatic reasons. One example, in this lecture I give only one example for every case because I don't have time. Darfur. There was a gentleman in Darfur whose name you probably never heard, whose name was Ahmed Asil Akbash. Now, Mr. Ahmed Asil Akbash was a member of a tribe, of a Bedouin tribe, that exists, of course, today as well, on the border between Chad and Darfur. He was a very intelligent man. He studied in Libya, and he developed a theory according to which the Bedouin tribes in Darfur are the descendants of the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad, of the tribe of El-Quraysh. And because of that, they have the right to dispossess these black slaves. I am quoting, these black slaves, namely the farmers who occupied the center of Darfur, were the majority of the population of Darfur. And the whole area between the Nile and Lake Chad should be controlled by these Bedouins, and the blacks should be removed from their land and their cattle taken away. Now he sold this theory to the leader of a major Bedouin tribe in northern Darfur, whose son, his name is Musa Halil, whose son today is the head of the Janjaweed, the wild group supported by the Sudanese government who killed the blacks in Darfur. So the ideology had an impact. It's very important. But the reason for the genocide in Darfur is not because the Bedouin tribes are descended from El-Quraysh. The reason is that the Sahara is encroaching, is spreading, the land is drying up, there is less and less water, less and less good land. And the herders, the herding tribes, the Bedouins, are trying to conquer the land, the good land, the land that still has water. There are no rivers in Darfur, but there is a lot of rain between June and September of each year. And it falls in the areas of the mountains, which is the center of the black settled farmer communities. And so, to conquer that, the second element was that there was a rebellion by the blacks against the Sudanese government, because there is oil in Sudan. They wanted part of that, part of the income. They wanted to develop Darfur, and the Sudanese government refused. And so there was a struggle over power. Who will rule? How will they rule? Over economy, and so on. So the ideology is pure rationalization. At the background there is pragmatics. And I will challenge any one of you who may want to discuss this to show me where this does not apply. It applies everywhere. In all genocides there may be a rationalization, but the rationalization is a cover for the real pragmatic reasons. With the Holocaust it's not like that, because the German Nazis had no reason, no pragmatic reason to attack the Jews. German Jews were German patriots. They wanted to volunteer for German armies. They fought in the First World War. They thought of themselves as German citizens of the Jewish faith, most of them. And the Jews had no territory. The Jews had no government. The Jews had no real political presence in Germany at all. The first time there was a Jewish committee that represented the Jews of Germany happened in September 1933, 8 months after Hitler came to power. Not because the German Jews wanted it, but because American Jews wanted to help German Jews, and there was nobody to distribute the money in order to support German Jews against the new regime. And so you needed a body to represent the Jews. So there was a representation of the Jews. For the first time in German history, the Jews had a representation. There was no Jewish body there at all. The only place where Jewish individuals controlled large parts of the economy of the country was in Hungary. In Hungary, in the late 19th century, Jewish individuals developed industries. And the Weiss family, the Goldberger family, and others developed resources in Hungary. Now, by the time the Second World War came, most of these had converted to Christianity or had intermarried with Christian families. But it is true that as individuals, there was Jewish impact on the economy of Hungary. It's the only country in Europe, nowhere else. In Germany there was only one major company that a Jewish family controlled, the electrical company controlled by the Rathenau family. The head of that family was a man by the name of Walter Rathenau, who was a great German patriot, a foreign minister of Germany in 1922, and he was murdered by German nationalists. And then the company changed changed the owner, and a German became an owner. So, the Jews didn't control any economy. The Jews as a group controlled nothing at all. The Jews were groups of people, always fighting each other, because, as you well know, Jewish civilization is a civilization of constant internal fighting and contradiction. The first time there was a Jewish attempt at an international political organization was in 1936, as a result of the Nazi rise to power, when the World Jewish Congress was founded. But the World Jewish Congress never included all Jewish communities, only about a third. It still exists today, and it is not, to put it mildly, not very important. Now, when you have this, the German Nazis invented a Jewish conspiracy that did not exist. Now, there was a conspiracy, but it wasn't Jewish, it was Nazi. It was a totally unpragmatic anti-Jewish ideology. It had nothing to do with real Jews, with economic, political, military factors at all.